deep in the woods, there's a turtle. Turtle is climbing a tree. He gets about a third of the way up, climbs out onto a branch, gets to the end of the branch, and jumps off. Starts swinging his arms madly. Ah! Immediately falls like a rock. Foonk! Bounces off the ground. Turtle lays at the bottom of the tree. Gets up. Climbs the tree again. Same limb. Crawls out on the limb. Jumps off the limb. Starts swinging his arms madly and like a rock. Smacko. Hits the ground. Now the whole time this is going on, across the way from there, on a separate branch, are two birds, male and a female, watching this all go on. After the third time that the turtle climbs a tree, dives out, splat, hits the ground. The female bird turns to the male bird and says, "Honey, I think it's about time we told Steve he was adopted."
Live from Casa de Clark in beautiful Independence, Iowa, it's Unemployed with your host, Matt Clark. Promotional consideration paid for by Starbucks. We pledge to hire 10,000 refugees from 75 different countries over the next 5 years to make coffee. Yeah. Take that, ISIS. That's right. Yeah. Nothing says anti-terrorism like a good latte.
Calm down.
Now, here's your host. He's never even heard of a Frappuccino. Matt Clark.
Say hi, Matt. Say hi. No, don't lick me. Say hi to the people. Greetings, Internet, YouTube, children of all ages. It's I, your unemployed superhero, coming to you live from the Music Conservatory at Casa de Clark, JP100D over his shoulder. Max Wonderdog. Oh, it is Monday, the 30th of January. Didn't sleep very well last night. I have a bit of insomnia, so. So how is everybody out there? Did you have a good weekend? I had actually a pretty good weekend, believe it or not. Friday night, my brother took me to Iowa City, the home of the University of Iowa, and I watched the Iowa Hawkeye wrestling team wrestle Ohio State in a duel, in a meet, and it was a good show. It was a lot of fun. Collegiate sports in person is a lot of fun. I've seen pro sports. I've been to NFL games in person. I've been to baseball games in person. The most fun I have, regardless of sport, is college football. And I don't care what sport it is. Football, wrestling, basketball. College sports is the most fun I think I have. I don't know why it is. The fans just get into it more. Maybe because they're smaller venues. I learned that smaller venues are more fun to watch sporting events in. For instance, I watched the Royal Rumble last night on the WWE Network. I'll do a video on it sometime. And they did it from the Alamo Dome in San Antonio, which sits about 52,000 people were there for the show. And it kind of lacked a little oomph because you couldn't get the reaction from the crowd from what was going on. And I felt that before. I've been to Pittsburgh, saw a Steeler game in person. I've been to Minnesota and watched Pittsburgh play the Vikings a few years ago. And those big crowds just don't, get. I think it's the crowd size for me anyway. It's the crowd size. So, what else happened over the weekend, huh? There's an elephant in the room. Brrr, an elephant in the room. That was my impersonation of an elephant, by the way. There's an elephant in the room. An elephant in the room. And that would be the muss that got rustled up over Trump's executive order, believe it or not. Big fuss over the executive order for Trump. I actually did a couple of videos on this over the weekend in various ways, shapes, and forms. You might see them. They might come out of the woodwork sometime down the road. Probably not. But here's the thing. Everybody come in, take a knee. Take a knee. Uncle Matt's going to pontificate. Come take a knee. The thing is, all this stuff is the stuff that Trump said he was going to do when he started. These are his campaign promises. What I find interesting, and I'm desperately trying to find whether it's true or not. I haven't gotten information if it's true or not. But I've seen a lot of lawyers on both sides of the argument talking on the internet, news programs. I have not seen the executive, the order. I haven't read anything. This is all third-party information for me. It's all hearsay if we were in a court of law. But from what I've heard lawyers say is that what he's done could be seen as not being unconstitutional. Now, I'm not saying it's right. I'm not saying it's wrong either. I'm kind of towing the middle here, trying to stay neutral in all this, to gain information about it. But from what I've seen from lawyers, looking at the language and comparing it to constitutional law, constitutional language, what they've done, there's an argument that it's not unconstitutional because the executive order doesn't say you can't come to America because you're Muslim. That's not what it says. It's basically saying we're going to put a stay on immigration from certain countries. It just so turns out those countries are mostly Muslim countries. And I've got the list, but I'm not going to run through it right now at the moment. People have interpreted it as being unconstitutional because they believe it's religious persecution. But I think it's going to take some law arguing to call it religious persecution. Because if you look, from what the lawyers are saying, if you look at the language, this is not me speaking, this is the lawyers I've listened to on the internet and on the news channels. If you look at the language of the act itself, it does not say you can't come to America because you're Muslim. It says we're going to detain you from coming to America if you're coming from this country. Like I said, I'm not arguing for or against it. I'm trying to stay neutral because it's impossible to break apart a logical argument if you take a side to begin with. That's the problem most people have, is they pick a side and then force facts and logic to fit the argument they're making. You can't really do that. What you need to do is look at something impassionately and then look at the evidence you have and then decide if it's one thing or the other. You can't argue this point if you think out of the box it's unconstitutional, all right? Because the way our laws work, it may not be. So I'm trying not to go into this with any prejudices. I'm trying to look at it unemotionally, because that's the way our law is going to look at it. That's the way our Supreme Court's going to look at it if it gets that far. And I wish I could come out here and rally and scream and yell, but I'm not going to do that, because in order to give you the good or bad news, you have to kind of look at it impassionately. I don't think, legally, I think there's a very high percentage chance legally this will not be overturned, because it is, like I said, it's not a religious ban. It's like saying you can't come to here from Russia because we have sanctions on Russia. And it's not saying you can't come here. It's just saying that we're going to take longer looking into your background than has been happening in the past. I do believe one thing is wrong about the law is apparently people who already have green cards and are already in America who are coming back to America are being detained. And I think those people are being let go because they've got green cards already, so they've already been through the process of checking your background and vetting you. So I think those people because there are some people getting through regardless of the executive order. Unfortunately, there's been a lot of emotion written about this, but not a lot of information written about it. And I go for information. I don't go for emotion. You may believe this is unconstitutional and un-American, and God bless you. But I want to know the facts so that I know how our justice system, because they're not going to look at it passionately. And if there's a way of getting it by the Constitution, if it's not right, chances are Trump and his buddies are going to try and figure that way out too. I want to know if it does stand up. I want to be able to tell people in my mind how it stood up. So that's why I'm looking at it the way I am. I will say this though, any kind of ban you put on immigration or letting people in and out of our country is a mistake, because the whole point of terrorism and terrorist acts are to get a society to cordon themselves off, all right, to get a society to shut down from a global community, you know what I mean, to isolate themselves. And that's what this is. This is a way of isolating America from the rest of the world. And it's doing what the terrorists want. All right? The whole point of a terrorist attack is to get you to fear the unknown so that you don't want to approach the unknown, to separate. The rest of the world is a lot weaker, especially militarily, if America is not in the fight. If we isolate ourselves, think of World War II. If the Japanese had never attacked America, all right, and America had not gotten into World War II, if Hitler hadn't attacked Russia and gotten Russia involved in World War II, he would have taken Europe. He would have won. Europe, anyway. They wanted the world. That was their problem. And they weren't very... They jumped the cart a little bit. If they'd have been a little more patient, they might have done pretty good. But instead, they got too many actors involved in the battle. That's what the terrorists are trying to do, to separate countries, to make it so that you don't trust anybody around you. That's what unfortunately, Trump's rules are playing into. They're isolating America from the rest of the world. Isolating America from the rest of the world will never work. It just won't. The big reason why you don't want to isolate America from the rest of the world is because there's a slight chance that the rest of the world could go, well, you know what? Turns out we didn't need them all along. That's what you really don't want to happen. The other reason why this whole thing makes no sense to me, and this is fact as well, you can look it up yourself, the 9/11 attacks, the Orlando bar shootings, the nightclub shootings in Orlando, the kid who shot up the airport in Florida, the major terrorist attacks that have happened in America over the last, I don't know, 5, 6, 8 years. If this executive order had been in place, they still would have happened. I hate to break it to everybody. The majority of terrorist attacks that happen in America in my lifetime have been from Americans. People that were living here, were citizens. Oklahoma City bombings, remember those? Those were Americans. Those weren't foreign nationals. All right. School shootings are done by kids that are Americans. They're not from Syria. If you look at things historically, banning people from coming into this country really isn't going to solve terrorist attacks for the most part. In my opinion, anyway. From the facts I've seen. They've been here all along. There's ways of getting into our country where you don't need to go through green card. If you think the wall's going to fix things, you're wrong, number one. They build tunnels, for Christ's sake, in Mexico. For the last 8 years, they've been, investigating tunnels from Mexico to the United States. The wall don't mean shit, just so you know. Drugs funnel into this country illegally by the ton from private aircraft. Private aircraft aren't as regulated as public aircraft are, by the way. So getting into this country illegally is not hard to do. So banning people that are going through the correct steps to be here, to me, is a fool's errand, because there are easier ways of getting into the country than doing it legally. It's the illegal stuff you got to worry about. Banning somebody from Syria from coming into America who's a government contractor ain't going to stop terrorism anytime soon, in my opinion. So, is the law useful? The executive order useful? No, it's not going to solve anything. Is it unconstitutional? Will it get overthrown? Don't know. If you listen to the people who wrote it, which obviously they have a slant, they wrote it in a way that it's not unconstitutional, which I could see. All of our laws are written by lawyers in a language you don't know, so you can't question it. I do know one thing, though. You can protest all you want. You can shut down LAX. You can shut down airports across the country. You're not going to fix anything. You're not going to change anything. The only way that this stuff stops is if someone sues the government. I believe Washington State has sued over this. But they have to go to court and get a court to overturn it. That's the only way this executive order goes away. All right? So this whole protest, pointless, meaningless. So there. That was my rant on Trump's little foray into immigration policy. What a week. I hate talking about politics, by the way. I really do. I'm not a political guy. I know it's nuts, all the crap. What I like to do is to hop on the internet, find out what's going on after watching porn, find out what's going on in the world, and come on here and discuss it with you beautiful people. You're very attractive. If you don't know that, I love the hair, by the way. That's what I prefer to have these be kind of conversational. I hate talking about politics, but unfortunately right now, things are so insane in the political area that I have to talk about it because it's insane. It dominates everything when it's this crazy. So unfortunately, I'm forced to talk about it. Me, myself, still unemployed. I'm waiting to hear back from a company I interviewed with last week. I mentioned it. I thought it went very well. I've had a couple interviews now go very well that I was pretty much dismissed after the interview was over with via email or mostly email. Actually, all email. I haven't even been called back by any of them and said, sorry, we're not going to hire you. Fuck off. I haven't even heard that. Mostly been email. So I'm being very low key on this one. I'm not putting my cart before my horse, so to speak. I'm doing my discrete mathematics homework and biding my time. And hopefully good news happens sometime this week. I'm just not going to put my cart before my horse again, because the disappointment really sucks, especially when it's a job you would really like to have, and you felt that it went very well. I don't know if my prior employer is poisoning the well. I wonder sometimes. Not much I can do about it, I don't think. But I could see them being that petty. Well, at least one or two people being that petty. And that's kind of disappointing, you know, to work as hard as you did for someone and to put as much of yourself into something, and then not only for it to be completely dismissed, but then to be vindictive. It's almost like like getting divorced. You know what I'm saying? There's no reason for them to be vindictive, but chances are they probably will anyway. It is what it is, unfortunately. Well, that's Monday. I had a good weekend. The whole immigration thing has dominated the news. I might do a video on the Royal Rumble that I watched last night. I might not. Depends on what kind of mood I'm in. Maybe I might not do it till Tuesday. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't sleep very well last night. I have insomnia, so what can you do? Well, this has been 20 minutes of stupidity, and I think that's more than enough for one spew session. Once again, if you got comments, questions, concerns, put them down below. If you like it, thumb it. If you don't like it, down thumb it. If you like it, then you better put a ring on it. That was stupid. Anyway, so yeah. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors about this exciting show. And I will talk to you again soon. Be good to your mother. Stay sexy, San Diego. And for God's sakes, whatever you do, don't forget to